The galaxy had known peace, or rather, submission, for 3,000 years. Emperor Zalor of the Vrethkai Dominion had built his empire on a simple principle: find a species, break their spirit, and harvest their world. 47 civilizations had fallen beneath his obsidian fleet. Each one believed they were unique. Each one believed they would be the exception. None of them were. The Vrethkai were not evil by the standards of the galaxy. They were simply efficient. Resources were finite. Power was not shared. And when they arrived at the edge of the small blue world called Earth, a planet barely 3 centuries into space travel, even Emperor Zalor's intelligence officers had expected nothing remarkable. Another soft world, his Grand Vizier had said, reviewing the dossiers. Tribal. Fractured. They still fight each other over rivers and soil. Zalor had smiled at that. Then they will not fight us at all. Admiral Darian Voss stood inside the Unified Earth Command bunker beneath the Swiss Alps and looked at the screen without blinking. 3,000 Vrethkai warships had just entered the solar system. Around the room, analysts were moving fast, too fast, almost stumbling, pulling up telemetry, cross-referencing databases that humanity had spent 20 years quietly building after detecting Vrethkai activity in the outer sectors. They had known this day was coming. Every general, every strategist, every sleepless scientist who had cracked Vrethkai signal encryption had known. Still, seeing it on screen was different. "They are broadcasting a surrender demand," said Lieutenant Joe, who managed communications. "Standard Vrethkai colonial protocol. They want our answer in 6 hours." "They always give 6 hours," said Captain Moni, looking up from his tactical panel. "Then they start with the cities." Voss turned slowly. His face was calm, not the calm of denial, but the calm of a man who had rehearsed this moment 10,000 times in his mind. He was 53 years old. He had given 30 years to Earth's defense initiative. He had buried friends, sacrificed sleep, argued in front of every political assembly the planet had. He had one purpose. This moment. "Get me Director Dai," he said quietly. Director Dai of the Quantum Infrastructure Division appeared on screen within seconds. She looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days, because she hadn't. Her team had been on standby for a month. "Admiral," she said, her voice steady. "Status?" Voss asked. "All 41 relay nodes are online. Synchronization is at 99.8%. She paused. "We are ready." The room went very quiet. Everyone present knew what ready meant. The project had no formal public name. Budget documents called it Initiative Hyperion, but among the people who built it, who worked 18-hour days and signed secrecy agreements so thick they had to be delivered in boxes, it was known simply as the button. Not metaphorically. There was an actual button. A single red key behind a glass panel on Admiral Voss's command console. It looked almost comically simple, the kind of thing you'd find in an old Cold War film, the kind of prop a director would use because no one would believe the real thing looked like that. But this one was real. "Hiwa," said Voss, addressing his senior science liaison, a man who had spent 12 years designing the system's core architecture. "Final confirmation. Walk me through it one more time." Dr. Hiwa did not sigh, though he had explained it dozens of times. "The Vrethkai fleet operates on a unified quantum-entangled command matrix," he said. "Every ship, every weapon system, every life support relay, they share the same command architecture. It is their greatest strength. Every vessel responds instantly to every order. There is no lag, no miscommunication, no chain of command delay." He let the silence sit for a moment. "It is also their only vulnerability." Voss nodded. "And we found the key. Humanity spent 70 years learning quantum entanglement. The Vrethkai have been using it for 3,000 years and never once imagined someone might find a way to inject a counter-resonance signal into the entanglement frequency." Hiwa almost smiled. They never imagined it because no civilization they conquered ever had the time to develop it. We did. Because they let us live too long, said Captain Moni softly. Because they underestimated us, Voss corrected. He looked at the screen. The Vrethkai fleet had moved to standard siege formation. Beautiful, in a terrible way, 3,000 ships arranged in a spherical grid, each one a cathedral of steel and dark energy. They had done this 47 times. It was choreography to them. Performance. 5 hours and 50 minutes remaining on their deadline, said Lieutenant Joe. Voss walked to the console. He lifted the glass panel. He looked at the button. Aboard the Imperial flagship Dominion's Eternal Breath, Emperor Zalor sat on his command throne and watched the blue planet rotate slowly on the holographic display. He had reviewed the intelligence report 3 times. Primitive nuclear weapons. Modest orbital defense arrays. A single space station. He had crushed civilizations with dreadnought fleets 50 times larger than Earth's entire military. Your Magnificence, said his fleet commander, they have not responded to the surrender demand. They rarely do, at first, Zalor said. Give them time. Fear is slower in primitive species. Should we begin the atmospheric demonstration? Zalor considered. The atmospheric demonstration, a single city reduced to glass, usually ended negotiations within minutes. It was unpleasant, but efficient. He opened his mouth to give the order. Admiral Voss pressed the button. The button sent a single signal, a precisely tuned quantum counter-resonance pulse broadcast across 41 relay nodes positioned throughout the outer solar system, positioned over the past 11 years disguised as weather satellites and deep space research probes. The pulse lasted 0.003 seconds. It touched every entangled particle in the Vrethkai fleet's command matrix simultaneously. The flagship systems went dark first. Not gradually, instantly. Every screen. Every weapon array. Every shield emitter. Every life support relay that was tied to the command network. One moment the Dominion's Eternal Breath was the most powerful warship in the known galaxy. The next, it was a very large, very cold piece of metal drifting in space. Emperor Zalor sat in total darkness for 3 full seconds before the emergency chemical lights flickered on, the only systems not connected to the quantum matrix. Report, he said. No one answered. Because no one could. Every communication system was dead. Across the fleet, the same silence fell simultaneously. 3,000 warships, the most feared armada in galactic history, drifted without power, without weapons, without propulsion. Not destroyed. Not burning. Just off. Like someone had flipped a switch. In the bunker beneath the Alps, the screens showed the Vrethkai fleet's power signatures dropping to 0 in a cascade that took less than 1 second to complete. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Lieutenant Joe let out a breath that was almost a laugh, covering her mouth with both hands. Captain Moni sat down heavily in his chair. Dr. Hai was stared at his readouts, checking them 3 times, because the numbers seemed impossible even to him, the man who had designed the system. Director Dai's face on the screen was unreadable. Then she pressed her palm to the camera in the old Earth salute, the one they'd adopted in the early days of the initiative. Voss stood at the console. He looked at the screen for a long time. 3,000 ships, drifting. The greatest empire in this region of the galaxy, neutralized by a 0.003-second signal and 41 disguised satellites. Send a message to Emperor Zalor, he said finally, his voice very quiet. What message, sir? Asked Joe. Voss thought about it. He thought about the 47 worlds that were gone. The species that never got 6 hours because they never had anything to bargain with. He thought about the scientists who had worked in secret for decades. He thought about the word efficient and how humanity had once been described as fractured, tribal, and self-destructive. They were all of those things. Still. But they were also patient. And creative. And they had been paying attention for a very long time. "Tell him," said Admiral Darien Voss, "that Earth respectfully declines to surrender. And that we are prepared to discuss the terms of his." Emperor Zalar read the message by chemical light, sitting in his powerless throne, surrounded by the silence of 3,000 dead ships. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Vrethkai Dominion had nothing to say. In the end, the galaxy would remember this day not as the Battle of Earth, because there was no battle. It was remembered as the silence. 3,000 ships. 0 shots fired. 1 button. Humans, the other civilizations would later say, were terrifying not because they were violent. They were terrifying because they were patient.